Hello class, welcome to Unit 5.2B, Solving Compound Inequalities. So today we're going to take a look at, again, three different types of examples with our or and statements. The first one kind of working with is or. So remember, when we look at or, it's looking at solving both and graphing both inequalities, because or is going to allow us to be either option A or option B. So when we start solving, the first thing we want to do is add 7 to both sides. This is going to allow us to kind of work through the problem. Dividing by 4. And that's going to give us one part. So it could be less than 5, or we now need to solve the second part, subtracting 1. First and say, all right, negative 3x is less than negative 18. And when we divide by negative 3, we can't forget to flip that sign. So this is going to tell us is x is less than 5 or x is greater than 6. So let's just take a look at this and say if x is less than 5, we're going this direction. If x is greater than 6, again, open dot, go in this direction. So it pretty much tells us we can have any answer except that little space between 5 and 6. So right there, first example is done. Looking at example 2, add 4 to both sides is going to leave us with x over 6 less than or equal to a negative 1. Multiply by 6. Now, we are not multiplying by a negative here. We multiply by a positive 6, so we do not flip our signs. So there's 1/2 of it, less than or equal to negative 6. And then over here, when we need to divide by fractions, it's actually easier to multiply by the reciprocal. And this reciprocal is negative, so I'm going to go ahead and flip this sign now before I forget. Because what that's going to do is just allow this side to simplify. So x is going to be greater than, well, this is going to leave us with a 25 over 2, which is really 12.5. Not a big deal, but it looks like we will have to add that number to our graph. Because this is an or statement. Now, these are a little off kilter here, so we're going to want to rewrite that at the end. But let's just double check before we have to simplify anything. X is less than or equal to negative 6 going that direction. If we're going to have to go up here somewhere to about 12.5, and that's going to be an open dot, and that's going to go that direction. So, or statement could be either one. Just make sure we take a second to just rewrite this so our answer is kind of back together. The last one kind of just ended up side by side, so that was pretty easy to box, but this one's all out of whack. Make sure you rewrite our answer. Okay, take a minute here to pause and practice. Make sure you have these completely solved before you continue on and check your work. Okay, as you do check your work, again, example 3 turned out pretty typical case. And now remember 4, okay, this one did kind of squeeze in one of those special cases that we do have some overlapping going both directions. So if it's going to be greater than 1/2 and less than or equal to 2, or less than, I should say, yeah, that's going to simplify as all real numbers. And example 5, nothing fancy here. Make sure you keep, flipping your signs when we divided by that negative 6. And our answer ends up to be a typical case here. Okay, good work. All right, so for these next examples, we're going to switch gears to our and statements. So remember, when it's and statements, that means we need for both of them to be true. So we still start the same way by solving. And once we solve by subtracting 6, and then we can divide both sides by 3, it's going to have to be x is less than 1 and something else here. So let's see what that's going to be. Add 5. Divide by 4. So we're looking for something that's less than 1 and greater than 3. Excuse me, negative 3, because that is a negative 12. So when we look at x is greater than or equal to negative 3, we're going to start here. Go in this direction. X is less than 1. We're going to start here, go this direction. And remember, this is going to be one of those cases where it has to be and. So once it gets less than here or greater than there, those no longer work. So we kind of have an answer that's, here. But we're not going to use that answer too often. What we're going to want to do is just kind of reorganize this and simplify to basically say, starting at our negative 3, it's going to be less than or equal to the x, which is less than the 1. So it should just kind of rewrite this equation from start to finish with our x's anywhere in between. All right, let's take a look at another one. Okay, example 2. Again, start by solving. Then we can multiply both sides by 3. Okay, so it's going to be less than or equal to 6 and something. So now we're going to multiply over here. Again, remember, multiply by the reciprocals. Okay, we don't want to divide. That's going to make things a little trickier. And once we multiply by the reciprocal, which is a negative, let's make sure we flip that sign. Then that's going to allow us to simplify that side. And then 2 times negative 4 is a negative 8. So we need something that is less than 6 and greater than negative 8. So less than 6 means it's starting up here, going this direction. And it has to be greater than negative 8, so that's going to start here and go this direction. So once again, as we look at this, that's going to kind of cancel off these other sides because it can't be less than 8 and greater than a 6 at the same time. So that's going to narrow us down to rewriting this equation. Starts at a negative 8, which is going to be less than our x, anything in between, which is going to be less than or equal to our biggest number, which is our 6. So that right there should be our inequality to kind of sum up these and statements. All right, good work. Take a minute here to stop and practice before you move on and check your work. Okay, first 2 examples. Take some time, check them up. Double check what you did. And our 5th example here. Just remember, when we're dividing by negative 1, we're going to flip. And then we summarize our answer. Okay, and looking at our 3rd case that we could see. We've been summarizing a lot of our answers and simplifying them to be a compound inequality. But remember, all of those inequalities came from 2 parts. X had to be greater than 3 and x had to be less than 10 before we sandwich them together. Now, what that's going to allow us to do as far as solving, when they give them to us all as one combined inequality, we can solve it as is, but we need to make sure we are solving all 3 parts of this equation at the same time. So what that looks like here is you're still looking for x and saying, how can I isolate x? Well, the first step is subtract 6. But instead of just doing 2 of them, we need to make sure we are subtracting all 3 sides. And nothing's going to change with our inequalities. until we would divide by a negative or multiply by a negative. But in this case, all we're doing is dividing by 3. So we're not doing anything fancy or special at this point. And that should be our answer. Now again, I always like to just double check. All right, we start here at the -5. It's going to be greater than a -5, but it's also going to stay less than a 2. Which looks like that's going to check out all right. That's our answer. All right, let's take a look at another one. Okay, example 2 doesn't have a lot going on here, but it looks like when we solve for x, we need to divide everything by -7. And if we're going to divide by a negative, we better flip those inequalities. All right, that leaves us with an x in the middle, +2, -5. Now, written like that, it's a little confusing, so let's rearrange with our -5 first, which is going to change our inequalities around to kind of match up, and that's more what we're used to. So if we start at a -5, x is going to be greater than -5, going that direction, but x also has to be less than or equal to 2, so that's going to come back this direction, which is going to sandwich us in between those two. And when it's already written like this, that is our answer. We don't have to rewrite anything for this one. So take a few minutes here to practice. Pause here before you move on to check your work. So take a look at examples 3 and 4, or practice 3 and 4. Make sure we're not making any mistakes, working through, graphing. All right, it looks like we have to add a -10 there. But other than that, just solve them and make sure you're doing all 3 parts throughout each problem. Okay, this 5th example here looks like it's solving down through. We do divide by a negative, so make sure you flip that inequality. Now again, we want to try to make sure we rewrite that as we're graphing. So it looks like it could be anywhere from a -2 to a +2. Okay, make sure you work through here and complete that Canvas assignment. All right, good luck. Have a nice day.